My name is Alex Caserta. I recently retired from a 34-year career as a visual arts instructor in order to embark on a new adventure. As a photographer, my goal is to reveal historical information while shedding new light on the people and places that sustain our rich cultural heritage. This is an opportunity for us to discover the farms, food, and flavors of our beautiful state. This is a time for us to explore the diverse wonders in our own backyard.
This is Harvesting Rhode Island.
Great, and cut. Thank you.
We are in a very old barn that was built in
Just around 1860.
1860. And this farm was started back in...
Well, we originally thought it was around 1860 that it was started when they started to build the barn, but we recently found a headstone that dates back to the 1840s. The headstone wasn't in a graveyard, so we just ran across it, but it was one of the Salisbury clan.
It's Edwin, son of Squire and Phoebe Salisbury, who died April 29th, 1843, aged 1 year, 6 months, and 14 days. Happy infant, early blessed, rest in peaceful slumber rest, by J. Tillinghast, and the level where it was planted. They were clearing some brush across the street several years ago, and the person doing the cleaning found this face down in the ground under all the brush, and it was right behind what was originally the main farmhouse. And my thought is that maybe the mother was so mournful at a baby passing that she didn't have this put up at the regular historical cemetery that holds other Salisbury ancestors. So, and we keep it right here at the farm for safekeeping.
And the original owners of the farmland?
The original owner was Squire William Salisbury.
And what generation are you?
I'm the 5th, and Justin is the 7th.
And when the farm first started off years ago, it was used for...
We think it was mainly used for growing hay, which they used or sold to a stagecoach line and a freight line that ran along Plainfield Pike up into Connecticut. As you're aware, horses tire out after a while, and they had a switching station across the street. And I'm making an assumption here, but I think most of the hay that was grown here was simply shipped over there and sold to the people running those lines.
Now, after they grew hay for a number of years in this farm, it went over to a dairy farm?
Was a dairy farm most of its life. My dad was the last dairy farmer to farm with cattle. He sold out somewhere in the late 70s, around in there, and we went back to doing the hay.
I remember this farm not living far from here in terms of always being able to come and pick strawberries and raspberries. How did that start?
That started basically because of a high school project that my son Stephen had. He decided that he was going to grow 500 strawberry plants and sell them. And so he planted the strawberries, sold the berries, made a little money, decided to plant more. So I think the second year he planted 1,000 berries. Once again, harvested the berries, sold the berries, decided that we should go into it on a much larger scale. I think we ordered 10,000 berry plants that year. At the end of that year, he moved away. And we've been doing between 10 and 15,000 plants each year.
And when did you start growing vegetables?
Sometime after Stephen got me hooked on these strawberries, we decided to supplement the strawberries with sweet corn and other products. The tomatoes, the peppers, the beans, all that sort of stuff. And probably this year we're growing more vegetables than we've ever grown.
And you also do a corn maze.
Yeah, Salisbury Farm was the first farm in New England to do a corn maze. We started it 17 years ago, and that was quite an accomplishment because we didn't know what we were doing. My two sons, Stephen and Keith, did it, but they waited a little bit too long before they cut out the design, and the corn was up in the air. They're on ladders trying to figure out where they're going to cut the paths. and it was quite an adventure. Since then, they've got it down to pretty much of a science.
Wayne, what can you tell me about the corn maze that you're going to be doing this year? Earlier, I found out that it was going to coincide with the 50th wedding anniversary.
It does coincide with it. A few weeks back, we had our 50th anniversary celebration, and we had it at the farm here, and my wife was completely surprised, and we were able to put one over on her, but we went through this whole charade of booking things in our calendar, and then that particular day, my son Stephen had arranged to take us out to dinner, but I had conveniently forgotten the dog at the farm, so we had to make a side trip to get back here.
And we approached the gate. It was still open, but it was 4:45, and we're usually open until 5.
And that's how we got her into the farm, and she noticed all the cars.
And then I spotted the cars. Heard about that. And that's when my son said, well, maybe it's an anniversary party, and he zoomed into the pavilion, and I saw my cousin from Vermont, my friend from Tucson, Arizona, another cousin from Kansas, another one from Utah, and I thought, this is no usual event. This is really wonderful.
And
Very surprised.
she was surprised, to say the least. And Stephen revealed to us that the maze this year was going to be based on our 50th anniversary celebration, with me on a tractor driving around a cornfield, and my wife Lois depicted as in one of her former roles as a nurse, and we got a big kick out of that.
And you have between, how many acres would you say?
Well, there's somewhere between 50 and 55 acres, not all cropland, but that's approximately how much we own.
I noticed that you're also doing some wood cutting in the back.
Well, basically the wood cutting is Justin's project. He got into that a year or two ago when we started to clear off some more land out in back, and thought it would be a good sideline for the winter, and he's done fairly well with it.
Yeah, I do some firewood to keep me busy in the winter. So I think right now I'm selling about 150 cords a year. It keeps me steady in the winter. In the winter we don't have a lot of work, so that's what I do in the winter.
And you deliver that wood if somebody came here to purchase wood? You would deliver it?
People come by, they order a cord or 2 cords or whatever, and I get it seasoned up and I deliver it for them. So it works out.
What type of wood do you use for this type
Just
of thing?
hardwoods, oak, maple, hardwoods like that. Yeah.
He seems to be very sophisticated for his age about running a farm. And his interest is just incredible, the level of interest that he has.
It amazes me as well. I mean, he's probably the only hope for this farm continuing on into the future. He works very hard. In the last few years, he's learned so much about this place and what to do and how to produce quality vegetables. If he wasn't here, I wouldn't be here.
So what's the process once you get the wood cut?
Yeah. Well, I cut a lot of wood off of the farm, and I get some brought in. Say the wood I cut off the farm, we got some woods here, and I drag it out with a skidder implement, and then you cut it up, you split it, and let it sit for about a year to season up. Sometimes it doesn't take quite so long, but that's usually what I do, and then you sell it, load it up and sell it.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the farms that we visit these days, they're not exactly sure about what the future of the farm is going to be in terms of people, taking over in the family, or some of them are actually talking about the possibility of having to rent the land out just so the realtors don't get a hold of it.
Yeah. A few years ago, we sold the development rights on the main part of the farm. So this part will always have to remain open or in farming. But that doesn't mean that it has to be an active farm, and that's really what we'd like to see it stay as.
And this is something you think you can do for a lifetime?
Yeah, I plan on being around here for my living, working off the farm anyway.
And do you think the farm is large enough and you have enough crops to earn a living off of it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple other things you'd have to do, which is why one of the reasons why I got into the firewood for the winter. You know, I think that there's going to be a couple other things that you're going to have to expand to be able to actually make a full-time living off of.
Right, so your diversification is going to be very important in terms of keeping the farm going year round.
Yeah, I just think you always got to be growing, you know. But it's so far it's been pretty good, so I think we can continue with it.
Justin has been working here along with his brother Brian for many years. His brother Brian chose to go on to college and became a mechanical engineer. But Justin likes this type of work, and he's good at it. He is a very hard worker, unlike a lot of people you see today. Isn't happy unless he's working hard. Besides all the farm work that he does around here, he also runs a wood business operation and sells 125 to 150 cords of wood per year, which he does all by himself.
Would you encourage someone who's young to get involved and maybe begin their own farm?
Quite frankly, agriculture is one of the only segments of our economy in Rhode Island that is growing. So there is a lot of interest. The problem with getting really deep into agriculture, it's a very capital-intensive operation. I was fortunate that I was able to do this because the land was given to me. I inherited it. If you've got to go out and buy land, it becomes very difficult for most people to get started, other than an acre here or there, and to keep it going. One of the things that seems to be helping, however, is with the state buying development rights and making land available to people that are interested in agriculture, this lowers the threshold for them to get in, decreases the amount of capital they will need to start up.
Yeah, I realize that a lot more people are getting into buying local, fresh products. And I mean, that does help us out. You know, a lot more people, instead of just going to Stop and Shop or the supermarket, whatever, they're actually coming to the farm and buying fresh products that hasn't been sitting in a truck for a week and then out on the shelves, you know. So the quality's there and it's a lot fresher. It probably tastes better too.
Hopefully, he will, not get sick of doing this type of work, because it's hard work.
It is very hard.
And we can continue on for another 100 years.
And John, I guess we're standing in one of the greenhouses right now that is shared by how many farmers?
6 businesses share this house, as well as buildings on the property in the barnyard.
Can you explain to the audience basically how this situation works while you're basically renting the land from the state?
Southside Community Land Trust has had a lease with the state on this property since 2002. They lease it to autonomous farm businesses. There's a lot of different dreams associated with Urban Edge. And it's not just young people either. I mean, I'm the newbie here. I came in 2008, and so my business is the youngest at Urban Edge. All the other ones have been here for quite a while, and some of the farmers out here are in their 60s, some are in their 40s. So, but yes, if your intention is to incubate your business, as some people like to call places like this, incubation farms, this is an excellent kind of model for doing that. Other people intend to stay here until they retire.
And you've been working this land since?
Well, a small part of where I'm working now was originally worked by my old friend Melissa Zill in 2007. And we were working together in 2008, and I sort of took over the business in 2009, and so this is year 7 for me, 2014.
How many acres? You were 2 acres, I think?
Yeah, I have 2 acres cultivated I've got kind of about a 3-acre area up on the hill. Yeah, so we have a pretty intensive cropping system where we kind of maximize our 2 acres of land.
And you mentioned that you have over 100 varieties of products that you plant.
Yeah, so it's the majority of what I do is annual vegetables, and there's probably around 40 different crops, and then among those particular crops we grow different varieties. So considering all the varieties, there's about 100 or so, 100 plus.
So what type of mechanism do you have set up for selling your products? Who do you sell through?
Well, it's changed a lot through the years, but in the past 3 years I've really streamlined it to be focused primarily on my CSA or my buyers club and wholesale. So my business is pretty much split down the middle at this point between my CSA and my wholesale accounts with restaurants and grocers.
Okay, and a CSA, what does that stand for?
Well, that stands for Community Supported Agriculture, which is essentially a buyers club where you buy membership into a farm's growing season, and every week or however the farmer determines it, you would come and pick up a share of produce. So that enables you to have a one-on-one relationship in sort of a farmer's market style situation with customers where your sales are pretty much guaranteed in the sense that you've already had a lot of the payment up front. The responsibility is shared between you and your customer. It's their responsibility to come and pick them up. So on a rainy day where you might miss out on your best farmer's market, it's not really a problem with your CSA pickup, because the people generally, we have CSA pickups are generally indoors, and so people will come regardless of the weather. And it's not very diverse. It's just me. I do provide products from other farms, such as fruit and meat and eggs and flowers and things like this. But it's kind of a captive audience, so it's not quite as maybe as fun as going to a farmer's market for some people. I think there's a range of what people are interested in as far as if they're interested in a farmer's market versus a CSA. For some people, the CSA is very convenient, but for other people, they might enjoy going to the farmer's markets.
And do you work with Farm Fresh at all?
Well, Farm Fresh has worked for me ever since I started the business. I mean, the networking that they've done, provided on their website, is just I can't over exaggerate how helpful it's been in advertising and promotion. So there's that. But then they also run the Market Mobile program out of their warehouse in Pawtucket, which is sort of an online resource for growers to list and post their products, and for customers to go on and buy. And Farm Fresh will then provide the delivery service at a fee. They set up the framework. You simply list your products, and then the customers go and purchase it. And at the end of a certain period of time, you get a list of what has been purchased.
Okay.
Yep, and then you just pack it and bring it, and they deliver it for you. Yeah.
So do you do organic growing?
I do. I've been certified for 3 years, but the fact of the matter is I came up through organic farms, and that's been my approach all along. Certification has been useful for me.
Now, if a layman came up to you and said, what's the difference between a tomato that's grown organically and non-organically, what's the best explanation to provide to someone?
Well, there's some simple explanations, but you could answer that question and just say, well, as far as technically the organic definition, it would say that there are only certain products that were allowed to be used in the growing of that organic tomato that are considered more beneficial for the environment, such as either no pesticides or very non-residual pesticides or botanical pesticides, whereas the other product would be potentially grown with more long-term damaging pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, etc. Also, the fertilizers that are used can be particularly harmful to the soil and the soil structure. Organic farming is very concerned with soil building. In fact, a lot of organic growers will insist that they're not growing food systems, they're growing soil systems, and sort of look at it from the foundational point. Many organic farmers, if not all of the small-scale farmers at the very least, would say that there's a much larger sort of philosophy behind what it means to be growing organically, and a lot of that has to do with the biology that you're maintaining in the soil, the long-term health, carbon sequestration, you name it. a lot of things go along with that.
I guess
with that
pretty
term.
technical.
Yeah, it can be technical, or it can be sort of get nebulous sometimes, too. But there's a clear difference. There's more of an emphasis on local too. You know, a lot of people will say, is it better for me to buy a conventional local tomato or an organic tomato from California? Well, how would you answer that question?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
What would your answer be?
Well, as you see in an example in Rhode Island, is that some of the conventional growers are starting to turn their fields over to organic certification. Motivations for that might be different. I can't speak for them, but the fact of the matter is that those farms were able to sustain themselves throughout the years. That land was conserved, and now a lot of them are no longer using certain products on some of their fields that have, deleterious effects on human and human health and natural systems.
When people think organic, they probably automatically start thinking about what the plants are being sprayed with, and
Yes.
they're not always really aware of what's being done to the soil.
They're concerned about the product that they buy and whether or not it's poisonous. They're concerned whether or not it contains material that's going to make them sick in the long run. What's often lost is the nutritional value. The difference between conventional and organic nutritional value can be quite different. It also can be completely the same. Organic farmers also have a lot to learn about making their product as nutritious as possible. These are things that a lot of people are talking about these days, and people are working with. We're doing some research here with trying to figure out what the best ways of using some simple on-farm applications to make crop more nutritious than they are already. But that's also something that plays right into the product that you buy at the end of the day. Do I need to eat 6 of these to get as much nutrition as I could out of one that was grown in a more biological, healthy way? That's also, the education churns along, and consumers will learn more about that as farmers learn more about it. There's a learning curve for farmers too. There's a lot of interesting work out there, a lot to be learned about producing healthy plants that are insect and disease resistant. Farmers have to deal with problems in the here and now. Long-term solutions take a long time to implement sometimes. But I think that often there are things you can do on your farm that don't require applying pesticides. I use a botanical pesticide called Pyganic. It's made from chrysanthemum extract. It's got a pretty much, if you're going to apply it, you have to come in contact with the insect as you spray it. The product allows you to harvest the product that you sprayed 12 hours after you've applied it, so it's non-residual pesticide. I've used it one time this year on one crop because I had an infestation that I couldn't deal with through other methods. But what I'm really telling you is all the times I didn't have to use it, right? Somebody asked me if I use pesticides. I say, no, not really. And they say, well, are you just lucky? Well, it's not luck. As every year I farm, I learn that less and less has to do with luck.
Yeah, and I can see they've got a few things growing that you'll stick in the ground before the season gets too cold to allow them to grow.
That's right.
What do you have here?
We have various cold hardy greens, bok choys and mustards and kohlrabis and collard greens. All that stuff is bound for the ground, and then we have some onions and some lettuce that will be going inside of hoop houses. The wintertime markets have expanded a lot, so there's a lot of outlets for buying local produce. Grocers too are picking up stuff from local farmers in the wintertime. So Fertile Underground Market, you name it, A Market in Newport, places like this that are interested in purchasing from local growers will have stuff through the winter as well.
And would you advise people to try to get an internship on a farm to see if they like it first?
Yep, I run internships every year, and we cover, we not only cover the growing practices themselves by doing the work on a weekly basis, but we also have, academic aspects to it too, financial advisement, this kind of thing. If you can find a thorough internship like that, I suggest taking it before you try and start a farm, and to toy around with it, your different interests in agriculture. So for instance, work on an annual vegetable farm, and then go work on a goat dairy if you're interested in livestock, or things like this. You can take the time to build up your experience and your expertise before you really make a go of it. In particular, if you're in an area where you want to be, intern in that area and get to know the other growers around and get to know the customers, where if you're working at a farmer's market or a CSA, get friendly with the customers, and that will help you build up your social capital. There's endless amounts of sort of good practice that can be advised, and there's farmers out there who know it very well. My advice would be get advice. There's so many different aspects and avenues to approach, not only being a good grower but being a good business person. That there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of people who are willing to help you, a lot of farmers who are very, very interested in helping the next generation, or anyone of any age getting involved in this lifestyle. And be aware that when you do that, it's not really a job; it is in fact a lifestyle. So you're making more than just what most people consider a life decision. I feel like you're making a lifestyle choice. But I imagine people will become hip to that pretty quickly once they start working on farms or trying to run their own business. A lot of us just kind of hope that this upward trajectory that agriculture is on is not a trend but a paradigm shift, and that the products speak for themselves, and the environmental concerns that the world is facing help motivate this change of paradigm, and conservation issues help drive it, and there's a lot of forces that kind of go through the prism of agriculture, if you know what I mean. So I think all those things will play a role in moving everything forward and getting more growers involved and sustaining the growers that are already here.